Ruth Evelyn Lockwood was born on August 1st, 1905, in this farmhouse on Bullet Hole Road in Mahopac, New York. In the 1920s, Ruth married Swedish immigrant Eric Peterson, and they raised 5 children down the street from Ruth's childhood home on Bullet Hole Road. The youngest of Eric and Ruth's 5 children was my father, Eric Ronald Peterson, better known as Ronnie. On April 25, 1953, he wed my mother, Ostry Sophie Engelson. In the picture before you, you can see a large open piece of property. This was part of the acreage my grandparents, Ruth and Eric, lived on. We called them Mum and Pop-Up. In the spring of 1955, Ostry and Ronnie's first son, Bruce, was born. On one of their regular visits to Mahopac, Mum had received a box of pine saplings from the Forestry Service. She asked her son Ronnie to plant them around the property that weekend. This picture was taken about 9 years after the pine trees were planted. The little girls are the neighbor Kim, myself, and my cousin Karen. We are about 5 years old. In the background, up by the car, you can see some of the evergreens. They are only a few feet tall. During the summer, we lived in a 2-bedroom bungalow that housed 2 sets of parents and 9 children. In the background of the pool my dad, uncles, and grandfather built is another pine tree that had been planted. You can see how over the years that same tree in the background has grown, along with the children. Behind Pop-Up and next to the car, a few of the pine trees on the lane leading from the road to my uncle's are in view. It is now the year 2010 in this picture. These are the same pine trees that stood behind Pop-Up in the picture before this. They've grown quite a bit, don't you think? Next door on the same piece of property, Mum and Pop-Up's nephew, Buddy Lockwood, lived. The story is told that one day Buddy dug up a few pine trees to plant in his yard next door. Who knew that one of the pine trees my dad originally planted was destined for greatness? On September 11, 2010, Eric Pause, the head gardener for Rockefeller Center in New York City, knocked on the door of the house Buddy once lived in. The search was over for one of the most famous Christmas trees in the world. They actually selected 2 pine trees. The evergreen on the left was taken down 1 limb at a time. These limbs were saved as filler branches for the monumental Norway spruce on the right, which was the one to be set up in Rockefeller Center. Here you can see the sister tree sitting alone without its sister. The top of it has already begun being pulled together, and if you look really closely, you can see someone up in the tree. It took over 1 week to prepare the 74-foot tall evergreen for the cutting ceremony. All of the limbs needed to be tied and pulled close to the trunk. After all, it was 35 feet wide. To give you an idea of the size of the tree, look to the left and you can see the chimney on the house peeking out by the tree. Here you can see how many of the limbs were wrapped and tied in order to narrow its width to fit on the tractor-trailer truck. Here the giant tree stands all ready to go, just waiting for the crew to come up for the tree cutting ceremony. A small road was built and a special crane was delivered to the Bullet Hole Road site. This crane was to be used to hoist the giant Norway spruce onto the flatbed truck. My dad, Ronnie, was on hand and watched from the hedge that separated Mum and Pop-Up's property from Buddy's yard. A large crew of Rockefeller workers were on deck to cut the monster tree from the home it had known for over 50 years. Here you can see the hordes of people gathered around in Mayapack to watch the event. Here you can see just how massive the trunk and limbs of the tree were as a crew member secures the crane straps to hoist the tree after it is cut down. Holy smokes! Look carefully at the base of the trunk. The tree is cut and the crane has it floating in midair. Thank goodness these men know what they're doing. Wow! Now the enormous tree is suspended horizontally by the crane. The Norway spruce is so big we couldn't even fit it in the picture frame. In the background you can see the evergreen being lowered onto a flatbed truck. Now you can see why the gardeners needed to tie up the limbs. There is no way a truck would be able to cart a 35-foot wide by 75-foot tall tree from Mayapack, New York, all the way to New York City without taking the proper care to transport it. The Norway spruce is all strapped in and ready for its trip to be the most famous tree in the world for 2010. Ron Peterson and Tom Lockwood, his cousin Buddy's son, are sitting on the stump of the giant pine after it was cut. Here you can see the trunk and roots of the tree that no longer stands on Bullet Hole Road. The crew from Rockefeller Center built a roadway onto the property to claim the beautiful evergreen. The property looks a lot emptier now, but the excitement for the small town of Mahopac will last for years to come. Now the Lockwood-Peterson Norway spruce is sitting in the middle of Rockefeller Center for the year 2010. Millions of people will come to the city during the holiday season to view it. From every angle, the tree is absolutely magnificent. Can you believe there are over 35,000 lights on that tree? That equals over 5 miles of lights strung on it. Many people will wonder where the tree came from, but few will know the story behind it. So if you've gone into the city this holiday season, you will know that my dad, Ron Peterson, planted this evergreen in Mayapack, New York, when it was a sapling back in the year 1955.